In 1990, the world was introduced to the horror of the Graboids, huge subterranean worm-like creatures that attacked humanity. The funny horror franchise Tremors has a huge cult following despite not being a massive financial success. What was going on behind the scenes? Well, that's what we're going to find out in today's video. WTF happened to the Tremors franchise? But first, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. They're small clicks for you, but they mean an awful lot for us. Thank you. Let's begin. In the early 1980s, writer S.S. Wilson was working as an editor at a United States Navy base. One day, he was hiking over large boulders that were used in pole vaulting, and a terrifying thought struck him. What if there was something under the ground that would prevent him from getting off that rock? Wilson immediately wrote down that idea and forgot about it. A few years later, after he had successfully sold the script for the 1986 movie Short Circuit with his writing partner Brent Maddock, he was inspired to look into his old ideas by his agent Nancy Roberts. That's when he remembered the idea again and shared it with Maddock and Ron Underwood, who at the time was working as a documentary director for National Geographic. Together, they developed an idea for Land Sharks, but had to abandon the name because there was a popular Saturday Night Live character called Land Shark at the time. The final script, titled Beneath Perfection, was completed in June 1988. The plot centered around handymen Val McKee and Earl Bassett, played by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward respectively, who were tired of their small-town lives in Perfection, Nevada. Their plans to leave are interrupted when a series of mysterious deaths occur, and they find out that the culprits are the Graboids, giant prehistoric worms that feed on human flesh. With the help of seismologist Rhonda and the survivalist couple Bert and Heather Gummer, they begin fighting the worms. The movie ends with the group calling in the authorities to begin an investigation about the worms, and Val thinking of starting a romantic relationship with Rhonda. The movie was well received, and Michael Gross, who played Bert Gummer, received recognition for playing the eccentric survivalist. Kevin Bacon initially resented being in the movie and had only accepted it as he needed the money to look after his upcoming child. He revealed that he nearly broke down in front of his pregnant wife over his disbelief over starring in a movie about underground worms. The unimpressive box office collection for Tremors did nothing to improve its image in Bacon's mind, and he once called it the worst thing he had ever done. But as time passed, Bacon would eventually come around to it and admitted that the movie was very fun to make, but he was at a very low point in his life during that time, and he had blamed everything on that film. Before the role of Valentine went to this reluctant star, it was offered to Matthew Modine, Bruce Campbell, and Bill Paxton, but Universal had the last say on it, and they believed Bacon had the star power. Early concept Graboids had the ability to mimic sounds perfectly to lure naive prey, but the writers thought that this would give them too much power and dropped the idea. If you've ever wondered where the Graboids come from, S.S. Wilson has 4 possible theories for you. 1. They could be aliens who came from a passing meteorite or a crashed spaceship. 2. They could be long dormant prehistoric life that sprang back up thanks to the changing climate. 3. They might just be regular worms that underwent mutation due to radioactive particles or waste. And lastly, they might be a government experiment gone wrong, genetically altered creatures. Of course, as the movie progressed, we were given more insight into their origin. A lot of work went into the creation of the Graboids. Designed by Amalgamated Dynamics, the huge Graboid that Val digs up was cast in lightweight foam and had been buried and dug up beforehand to give it a natural look. The tongues of the Graboids were inspired by eels and desert horned vipers. They were made by using heavy-duty vacuum hoses under foam latex skin. Meanwhile, the creature itself is based on the Mongolian death worm, a cryptid that attacks all kinds of animals. The Graboids aren't some creatures that appeared in the writer's mind and they slapped it onto paper. They went through a whole process of perfection. Originally, the Graboids had simple appendages for tentacles. During the design process, the tentacles took on an ornate form, even adapting a flower motif at one point. Other designs had the tentacles looking like medieval weapons, but all these ideas were dropped for being too gimmicky, and a more natural style was confirmed. To make sure they looked realistic on screen, many different sized puppets, maquettes, and animatronics were made. To make it look like they got shot, holes were pre-cut and covered with patches of skin. They were later filled with air lines. The special effects team shot the creatures in an abandoned railway station for 6 weeks. The Graboids had to be constantly repaired, and everything was shot in daylight. The movie garnered $16 million against its modest budget of $6 million. Though this should have been considered a financial success, the people at Universal Studios weren't very happy about it, as it barely reached a fifth of their projected success. This shortcoming was, according to Wilson, due to the lack of marketing and promotions undertaken. Meanwhile, Maddock blamed the theatrical trailer, which, according to him, was cringeworthy and kept audiences out of theaters. But this disappointment would soon be drowned out as Tremors was a massive hit on home video purchases. It became one of the most rented films of 1990 and won over a huge cult following. Brent Maddock and S.S. Wilson returned to work on a sequel, with Wilson replacing Ron Underwood as the director. MCA Universal liked the script, and a budget of $17 million was allotted for the film to be shot in Australia, with Kevin Bacon and Reba McEntire, who had played Rhonda, reprising their roles. Bacon had also been offered Apollo 13, so he declined to return. Meanwhile, McEntire had recently finished a major tour and couldn't return. The writer's response to this was Grady Hoover, a loudmouthed friend of Earl who was characteristically similar to Val. The plot explained how Val and Rhonda had married and moved away to have a quiet life, while Earl Bassett was hired to deal with a graboid infestation in Mexico. The studios didn't see a bright future for Tremors 2, Aftershocks, as there was no star power, so the movie ended up on the verge of cancellation due to high costs. Many actors and effects artists who wanted to see the movie make it to production offered to lower their rates, and Wilson offered to direct for free. With a budget of just $4 million, the movie was moved to the Universal Home Video division, where it would be a straight-to-video movie with a limited theater release. Despite the major budget cut, most of the original script was retained, with only small changes made. For instance, the filming location changed from Australia to Mexico, and many special effects sequences were removed. Tremors 2, Aftershocks had a tense plot, as it was revealed that the creatures our heroes were fighting weren't graboids, but shriekers, creatures that spent most of their time above ground. The prop team definitely deserves some kudos here, as they made the shriekers come to life using puppets and dummies. The design of the shrieker was hard to nail, according to Wilson, as he said that the shriekers were babies, and babies have an inherent cuteness to them. But here, these deadly babies needed to be scary. Though during the production of this film, shriekers were considered the first stage of the graboid life cycle, later movies changed this lore, but the shrieker design was reverse engineered to imply that the graboids started out as shriekers. They would then gain so much weight that their legs would atrophy and fall off, giving them their worm-like appearance. It was also decided that they were pack animals, and their screams would have unique heat signatures to prevent the pack from attacking each other. The unique sound of shriekers was created by mixing together the calls of a whale with a crying baby. As for the graboids in the movie, a lot of previous models and puppets were reused. Once the film was finished and test screened, it received glowing reviews, inspiring filmmakers to push for a theatrical release, but studio execs disagreed. Eventually, after 2 whole years on the shelf, the movie was released on video cassette in 1996. This would be the start of Tremors becoming a straight-to-video franchise, as no more movies were lucky enough to gain the theatrical release that, honestly, they kinda deserve. 4 years later, Tremors 3, Back to Perfection, was greenlit by Universal, and Brent Maddock wore the director's cap. John Wepley wrote a script for it based on the story created by S.S. Wilson, Brent Maddock, and Nancy Roberts. The movie, as hinted at by the titles, returned to its original setting of Perfection, Nevada, where all defenses against the graboids have fallen apart. Burt Gummer wants to kill them, but as they are endangered, he's forced to capture one alive. In this movie, we're also allowed information regarding the evolutionary stages of the graboids. The graboids evolve into shriekers, which molt their skin and become winged creatures called ass blasters. Eventually, Perfection is turned into a federally protected graboid reserve, and the residents learn to live alongside the deadly creatures, with one especially huge albino graboid called El Blanco. Tremors 3 is the longest Tremors movie, coming in at 104 minutes. As the home-release Tremors movies were gaining some considerable success, Wilson and Maddock kept on pumping out more movies. Tremors 4, The Legend Begins, was released in 2004, with Wilson directing a script he wrote with Maddock and Roberts. It acts as a prequel to the first film and is set in Rejection in 1889. The economy of the small town of Rejection was completely dependent on a silver mine nearby, which became a site of disaster after some graboid eggs hatched and attacked the miners. Bert's great-grandfather, Hiram Gummer, is the owner of the mine, and he decides to leave town. When he tries to convince others to do the same, they refuse to leave their home and ask him to give them the mine, threatening to leak the info about the graboids, then called dirt dragons, the potential buyers if he didn't. Gummer decides to meet them head-on and attacks them with his fellow citizens. Once the creatures all die, the residents of the town decide to keep it a secret in order not to scare away other potential settlers. The town is renamed Perfection, and Gummer builds a house in the same place where Bert would have his home years later. Around the time of Tremors 4, a TV show was produced which showed the residents of Perfection living alongside El Blanco, an albino graboid, while also dealing with the numerous characters like politicians and mad scientists that are bound to end up in a federally protected graboid reserve. Developed by Wilson, Maddock, and Underwood, the show aired on Sci-Fi, the science fiction channel, with its 13 episodes out of order. Sci-Fi did this on purpose as they hated the original order and wanted to raise ratings. It later aired chronologically on the G4 network. The TV show also faced some drama due to an unfounded rumor that it was being shot as a replacement for the cancelled Farscape show. Despite the initial uproar, the first episode became the Sci-Fi Network's highest-rated pilot. Unfortunately, the number of views per episode began to decline, and it was cancelled mid-season with just 13 episodes. There were more plans for TV adaptations, as Tremors 2: Aftershocks: The Lost Monsters was also being developed as a sequel to the TV series. The show seemed promising, as Kevin Bacon was going to return as Val and was also set to executive produce the show. The show was first announced in 2015 and was rumored to have been picked up on by Amazon Prime in 2016. However, the streaming platform passed on it, and Sci-Fi picked it up instead. The premise was that Val and Earl, thanks to their newly earned fame, were being sought out by people who believed in UFOs and other cryptids to battle them. Fans rejoiced that they would get to see the show, as it was announced that Vincenzo Natali would be directing, with Andrew Miller as the showrunner. They were left disappointed, however, as Sci-Fi passed on the pilot. Kevin Bacon was just as disappointed as the fans, if not more so, as he admitted to having worked very hard on it. He admitted that Val was the only character he had played whose future intrigued him. When asked about the possibility of the series seeing the light of day someday, Bacon said that he had no idea what would happen, but he didn't say no, saying that stranger things have happened. Back to the movies, Wilson and Maddock had a fifth screenplay ready, and it was titled Gummer Down Under. Though there was interest in the movie, Universal stalled its release so much that the filmmakers were sure there would be no Tremors 5. What Universal was planning was far sneakier, as they wanted to reboot the franchise without Stampede Entertainment, the film production company that consisted of the original creators, Ron Underwood, Wilson, Maddock, and Nancy Roberts. Stampede Entertainment was offered executive producer credits with zero creative control, which angered the original creators so much that they refused to return. John Welpley, who wrote the script for Tremors 3, was brought in to write a script that was based on Gummer Down Under. The result was Tremors 5: Bloodlines, which relaunched the franchise 11 years after Tremors 4. The movie followed Burt Gummer, star of his survivalist web series Battle Ass Blasters, in South Africa, with his new cameraman Travis Welker. Along with the Graboids and Ass Blasters, Burt is forced to deal with the Queen Bitch, a massive graboid with independent tentacles. As their fight continues, Travis reveals that he's Burt's child from a one-night stand and had joined to be his cameraman to be more like his father. After the Graboid situation is brought under control in South Africa, Travis and Burt co-host his show as they travel around the globe battling various monsters. The Graboids in this film are a totally different strain and don't follow the life cycle of the Graboids we're familiar with. They're more evolved, agile, and faster, and were inspired by African termites. Their bodies were also redone to look similar to corkscrews. Graboids here directly evolve into ass blasters, so they look more like each other without the shrieker phase in between. Tremors: A Cold Day in Hell followed in 2018, directed by Don Michael Paul and John Welpley. Burt and Travis investigate the death of young researchers in Nunavut, Canada. They successfully deduce the researchers at DARPA were planning to make a bioweapon using graboids. During the course of the investigation, Burt finds out that he has been infected by a parasite from years ago when he was inside a graboid. Travis extracts venom from a graboid and uses it to save Burt, and the father-son duo demolish the graboids. The Graboids we see here are the same breed as the ones seen in South Africa in the previous film. This is highly illogical considering they are geographically closer to the American species and therefore would have looked like the ones we saw in the earlier movies. Michael Gross was the only actor from the first film to keep reprising his character. He's also the only character who has appeared in all 6 Tremors movies and the TV show. Director Don Michael Paul joined him once again in Tremors: Shrieker Island. The plot begins with Bill, owner of Avex Biotech, genetically altering Graboids into superior creatures and leading a wealthy hunting party to hunt them. Meanwhile, Dr. Jasmine Welker, researcher and Travis's mother, is onto him and sends her colleague Jimmy to fetch Burt. Burt reveals that Travis was arrested in Mexico for smuggling mushrooms, and he had decided to retire from everything Graboid. Jimmy convinces Burt to travel along. The Shriekers that evolve from the genetically altered Graboids are also superior and prove to be quite a difficult fight. Burt and his group remain undeterred and finish off every Graboid except one superior one called the Queen. Burt decides to lead the Queen to the Devil's Punch Bowl, an inactive volcano. To ensure the Queen dies, Burt sacrifices himself, and both the Queen and Burt meet their demise. The others hold a small memorial for Burt Gummer, the legendary Graboid Slayer. This, as the fans seem to see, is a full stop on the franchise, as the most beloved and regular character was killed off. Michael Gross, however, doesn't seem so disheartened, as he told the podcasters of Bloody Disgusting that the door is still open. He also added that Universal, however, might have had enough of Tremors. Around this time, fans on Reddit began to notice that their favorite franchise wasn't being treated right by Universal. For starters, the official Universal website doesn't list Tremors in its list of films. Conspiracy theories began to swirl around, with people believing that Universal was out to make a quick buck after the 2003 TV show by employing cheap actors and low-effort scripts, as fans would watch it as long as Michael Gross was involved. The cancelled Bacon TV show was also discussed, as it was something that fans were looking forward to. A person claiming to work for Sci-Fi said that the pilot was terrible and the test audiences hated it. They also added that Sci-Fi didn't have the budget to afford Kevin Bacon. But mind you, this is Reddit after all, so there's no guarantee that anyone's telling the truth. But if this person is to be believed, there was no greater conspiracy than that. However, further news about the ending to Tremors 7 added fuel to the fire. Gross revealed that an alternate ending was shot where Bert would come out, bloody and messy, while everyone was mourning him, and he would be offended that they believed he died. But Universal had insisted on Bert Gummer's death. Despite the ending, Gross said that since the body wasn't seen on screen, the 8th movie could still happen, with Bert in a full-body cast or a motorized wheelchair. Despite Gross's positive outlook, the rumors had no intention of stopping. Some pointed out the fact that the episodes were all jumbled on the NBC app, which could just be the original non-chronological order they aired on the Sci-Fi channel. Others also brought attention to the fact that the posters made by Universal were terrible, and even the filmmakers opposed them. One theory went so far as to accuse Universal of hoarding Tremors merchandise and trying to make sure that the creators didn't get the rights to Tremors, as it's bound to revert to them 35 years later, which would be this year, 2025. All those theories and rumors have come to an end now, as the rights have finally reverted back to the original creators. In April 2025, S.S. Wilson eagerly broke the news to his fans at the second annual Tremor Fest in Santa Fe, New Mexico, telling them though that they still didn't have the rights for Shriekers, Ass Blasters, or any of the sequels, they were glad to have the rights to their original screenplay. Fans wanted to know whether Stampede would produce a remake of the original script, but Wilson assured them that the plan was to make another sequel set in Perfection, Nevada, with some good old Graboids threatening the heroes. As Stampede only has rights to the movie in the US, Wilson admitted that if a movie were made, they would have to enter negotiations with Universal to discuss foreign distribution rights. That's not the only thing Stampede Entertainment has no rights over. Explaining their rights, a blog post was made on their website which said that they were considering a few ideas, including Kevin Bacon's return as Val, but nothing was set in stone just yet. The post also added that they don't have licensing over the title Tremors, as their original script was called Beneath Perfection, and they also couldn't license any merchandise. Even with all these ifs, ands, and buts, fans are excited about the new direction the franchise can develop in. We'll take zealous and enthusiastic creators over monopolistic movie studios any day of the week. Marvelous verdict! A franchise that was a spirited success, Tremors continues to be loved by comedy horror fans today. What new developments do you expect to see now that Stampede Entertainment has the rights back to the original characters? Let us know your hopes in the comments down below, and if you like this video, please let us know by tapping that thumbs up. We'll soon be back with more awesome stuff, but until next time, stay aftershocked.